Hey, it's James from All Hail Internal Combustion. I'm going to take a break from working on the Pontiac today and do a little work on my truck. It's a 82 Ford F-150. I already did a video on it. But as you can see, since it's been sitting for a while, it's turned into a storage unit for a bunch of crap. Actually, the back window is going to go in this truck because I like solid back windows. Got another hood for it that's not all bent up. I also have a cowl panel down in the basement for it that I'm going to put on. It's already been sanded down and primered and painted the final color that the truck's going to be. But I committed the ultimate sin with this thing. I let it sit around for like 5 or 6 months and didn't mess with it and didn't start it like a moron because I just had this thing running really good. But went to start it the other day and it ran like crap and sputtering and backfiring and popping and everything else. So I know my carburetor's goofed. So I came back and I checked the fuel and the tank was completely dry. I have a fuel cell in this because the lovely people at Ford decided to put the gas tank in these things in completely the wrong place. So I picked up a cheapo fuel cell off of Marketplace, and I think I paid like 40 or 50 bucks for it. So that's cool. I like saving money. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and pop the carburetor off this thing and take it and put it on a bench and clean it out and get it working right. And I'm going to start this thing once a week and let it idle and warm up. I still got some electrical work to do underneath the hood to hook the fan up so it comes on at the right temperature. Got some interior work to do to it, but I need to keep it running and need to keep it moving around or else it's just going to sit and go to waste again. So I'll be back once I get the hood popped open and under there. Alright, so got the hood up. I don't have springs on this hood because I'm a rocket scientist and I decided, I don't want the extra weight. But man, these hoods are heavy. I think on the next one we'll take out all these braces. But we're under the hood and I'm going to pull the carburetor completely off so I can take it in on the bench. I could do it on the truck, but these things are so easy to get off that might as well do it that way. Go ahead and pull the air cleaner and gather tools and get set up and we'll be back. Alright, so I got all my tools together. I need to pull this carburetor off. Of course, first thing, air cleaner. Leave that in for now. Disconnect the accelerator linkage. Disconnect the return spring. Pull my vacuum off. Gotta remove my manual choke. As you can see on this carburetor, it's all white and chalky and powdery. We live in an area that's really freaking damp and humid all the time. And it basically turns anything that's aluminum into crap because it's always so damp down here. So as you can see, my Mickey Thompsons, I got the white powder on the exposed part. Carburetor, when I put it on this truck 2 years ago, I bought it off some dude on Marketplace and it was basically a brand new carburetor. The guy bought it, realized that he possibly wanted to go with fuel injection and turned around and sold the carburetor, and it had never even had fuel in it, and I picked it up I think for $100. So that was a pretty good deal right there. And this thing has naturally got the little tiny carburetor bolts on it that aren't 1/2 inch like most of them would normally be. So had to break out the adjustable. And make sure when you're pulling your carb off, if you've got any washers on there, make sure you take them off before you lift the carburetor up, because dropping a washer down your intake kind of sucks, especially if it rolls down deep and ends up in your intake manifold. You might not be able to fish it out of there with a magnet because it's in a really bad spot, and it sucks to take your intake manifold off to fish out a washer and then take the chance of dropping it down your lifter valley, which will end up in your oil pan, or dropping it farther down the port of your intake, and that just basically, you're going to have a bad time when that happens. Ask me how I know. So I got 2 of them off. Go ahead and get these ones in the back, and this carburetor will be ready to come off. Might be a little tiny bit of my problem. So far, 2 of the bolts holding my carburetor down were loose. So I could have had a vacuum leak down there at the base plate that was causing this thing to run like crap. But I also know I did, when I went to start it back up, I had water in the fuel line. So it sucked a bunch of water into the carburetor, and no doubt it's still sitting in the float bowls. Just hanging out and being ignorant. That's the 3rd nut and washer. Going after number 4 back here. I mean, it was loose too. Okay. So, word of advice, check your carburetor every once in a while, because it might be loose like mine was. And the only thing I have to do once I get this nut and washer off of here is take off my fuel line, which I believe is a 3/4 inch wrench, which I have with me. Yep, 3/4. And watch these when you take them off too. Naturally, if you care about your pan or whatever, put a rag down there to catch any fuel that might come out of here. But this one, I believe, is pretty fuel free. Make sure you get your washers. This is a banjo fitting, and it's got 2 crush washers, one on the inside, one on the outside, that seals your fuel from leaking. Hopefully you can see that, because I got you on a tripod. So make sure you got your 2 washers to go with that. Pull your banjo out of the way, and essentially take your carburetor off. And I still got my power brake line attached here in the back that's going to fight me. And we'll be right back. Alright, so I got the carburetor off of the truck. And what I want to do is I want to see how dirty it is on the inside and how contaminated the fuel is. So I want to make sure I keep it in this upright position and not just take it and flip it over and dump it out, because I want to see what's in the bottom of my bowls. So I'm going to put something over top of my intake so nothing gets in there, because the kids are playing in the yard, and it would be my luck that one of them threw a rock and it went down my intake. But I'm going to cover that up and take the carburetor in and put it on the bench, and we'll tear it apart. Alright, so we're back with the carburetor. Got it here on the bench, and people buy all these fancy stands and stuff to put underneath their carb. Just find something to set it on. That way your linkages and stuff like that don't get in the way. Because you want to be able to work your throttle if you're checking your accelerator pump, for instance. And you just want to have all your linkages some freedom to move. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the air cleaner stud out. And what I want to do is I want to take a look down inside the carburetor. We're going to be looking back here at the accelerator pump squirters. So I have gas in this thing. I want to make sure that they're, and I don't know if y'all can see that, but accelerator pump is working. So that's good. I know I don't have any accelerator pump problems, even though I thought I did. So I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on the stand, and we're going to break this thing apart. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start tearing this thing down. On this particular carburetor, it uses T20 Torx fasteners to hold it all together. So we got that out. I'm going to go ahead and take all these screws out. And if you're kind of new to this, set your screws kind of where they go on the carburetor on your bench. That way you won't goof up, because on some carburetors you'll have like 1 or 2 screws that are way different than everything else, and you don't want to go blowing a bigger screw through there than you need to, or else you could end up cracking something, because the material carburetors are made out of isn't exactly strong. So this is the bracket that holds my manual choke cable. Put that right there. These two. Before I get too far on this carburetor, we want to go ahead and pull out our metering rods. Set them off to the side. Flip that around. They come right on out, along with their spring. And on these you can change your spring to make your metering rods more agreeable with your engine, because what's supposed to happen is when you start your engine up with one of these carburetors on it, these metering rods are supposed to pull down. They're not supposed to bounce all over the place and act crazy. So you have to adjust by different springs to make your metering rods behave themselves. So we're going to get back to pulling all our screws out of the carburetor. And from what it looks like on this particular one so far, all the screws appear to be the same length, which is really cool. Alright, so that'll be the last screw for the top plate. Then over here on the side, we've got the accelerator pump lever, which is a flathead screw. So I'm going to go ahead and take that on out of the way. And on these carburetors, I don't know if you can see or not, but there is 3 holes over here on your accelerator pump. And I happen to have mine set up in the first one. So I'm going to take that and set that off to the side. And just remember that I had it set up in the first one, which I'll probably end up forgetting. And now we can go ahead and take our top plate off. They're usually a little hard because they've been sitting on the carburetor for a while. And you don't want to go getting all crazy and prying on stuff you don't need to be prying on to get these things off. You want to kind of take it easy on them. And I'm going to grab a hammer. No, don't want to wail on it with a hammer. I'll take the plastic part of a screwdriver, tap around on it, see if we can't get it loosened up. It's starting to lift. And let me double check that I did not forget any screws. You always want to double check that. And it appears that I have not forgotten any screws. So cool. There we go. Okay. And we're going to basically lift up on this, pull our accelerator pump out, set that off to the side. We got our fuel bowls here. I've also got this lever that I need to disconnect. There's a little baby pin, or a little baby cotter pin back here that I can take out to get this out, which I did not see before. Because honestly, this is the first time that I had this carburetor apart since I've owned it, because it ran great. I tuned it, and that was it. So we're going to pull up. I'm going to flip over. There's our float bowls. And I'll check them before I put it back together to make sure they're in spec. I'll set that off to the side. And what I wanted to take a look at is down in the carb. Pull you up the stand, and we'll have a look. And that's disgusting. And that's partially disgusting. So, absolutely got some crack down in the fuel bowls. And there's your primary jets right there. And they're probably clogged up. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off my idle mixture screws. Should have checked how far they were in, but once I get this thing gone through and cleaned out, I'm going to just baseline set the carb and then go from there as far as tuning it goes and idle mixture and all that happy business. So I don't really want to set it up the way that it was set up before, because that might have been wrong because there was crap in it. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this vacuum cap off. Make sure you check your vacuum caps whenever you're having idle problems too, because the caps they make nowadays, I know everything ain't like it used to be, but these definitely ain't like they used to be. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing dumped out and sprayed out and cleaned out, and we'll see what we got. Alright, now I got the fuel dumped out of the carburetor, and as you can see on this side, it's not horrible. I mean, there's some crap in there that needs to be cleaned out. But on this side right here, your fuel would come in back here through your top plate, and then it goes into your fuel bowl. So this is like the primary bowl that gets hit first. And then this one takes all the dirt first. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but this thing is completely clogged up with, it feels like sawdust. It's like a slurry. And I don't know where this came from, because that fuel cell that I bought was completely clean. The truck's got all new fuel lines on it. And everything was brand new when I first fired this thing up, and this crap came from somewhere, and it feels gritty like sand, but it's not sand. So got to get this thing blown out. No, calm down, it's not dinner time. This is what I pulled out of my carburetor on that one side bowl area. So we've got whatever this slurry is. We've got drops of water, which I already knew there was water in the fuel system, but this right here has completely plugged up the main jet on that side. So we have a problem. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a can of carbon choke cleaner, because this is a carb and it has a choke, so it kind of makes sense now, doesn't it? So first I'm going to go ahead and put some through where my idle mixture screws go. And as you can see, coming out there, coming out there. And we should also have spray coming out where the throttle blades are, and we do, so we're good to go. So we'll go ahead and back flush it. Now I got the nasty float bowl. I'm going to go ahead and fill that one up and grab an acid brush or something to clean that out with. So let me find one. Alright, so I got an acid brush. You pick these up at like your home improvement stores and stuff. They're dirt cheap, but they're nice for getting in there and cleaning. And it looks like whatever this crap was that was in my carburetor has permanently stained the hot metal that this is made out of. Some of it's coming clean, but for the most part it's still looking kind of skanky in there, but I think that's going to be a permanent stain that I'm never going to get out, and once it gets fresh fuel in it, it'll be happy. So I'm going to go ahead and hit both sides, even though this side is not bad at all. The only thing sucks about these is you can lose some of your bristles. Just make sure after you're done you blow everything out. And I'm also going to get this crossover passage here and make sure none of that little nasty stuff is still stuck in there. And I'll take this and dump it out. And as you can see, that's permanently pitted in there, which really sucks, but it is what it is. It's still usable, and there's nothing else coming off in my hand. So now I'm going to go ahead and break out my compressed air and blow everything out. Make sure that I blow through my jets. And there are a set of jets here in the back that are for your rear venturis. So I'm going to go ahead and spray some carburetor cleaner through there. Make sure it comes out. As you can see, it's coming out good. Same thing on that side. So now we're going to do like we did before. Blow back through. Alright, so I got that taken care of, and what I want to do is I want to go ahead and fill up my accelerator pump well. And make sure that my accelerator pump passages get clean too. And it looked like the one that was on the driver's side of the carburetor was a little bit clogged up. So we're going to go ahead and hit this again. And run it through. Now I got a nice flow coming from both sides. And on these accelerator pumps on the Edelbrocks, you can get different springs and you can get different material for your actual accelerator pump itself. This one is the tan material, and I believe there's a blue one, and they're both ethanol friendly. I hear a lot of stories about the black ones going bad with ethanol, so if you got your carburetor apart, check that. You might want to get another one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish blowing this thing out, make sure there's no dirt in it, and then I'll go ahead and clean the outside real quick, and we'll start to put this back together. Alright, so back on our carburetor. Now I want to check my float adjustments. And what I got here is a 7/16 drill bit, which is what they recommend that the floats be at. And what you want to do is you want to get a measurement between your gasket and where I guess the apex of this circle would be. So if I go ahead and put my drill bit underneath of the float, you can see that goes up quite a bit, which means my float is set way too high. Bring the other side around, check it. Also, way too high. Sorry about the view, hard to juggle all this crap. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to set the float height adjustment on this. So all you're going to do is you're going to pull the pin out. And don't worry if the pin's loose, there's retainers when it goes down in the float bowl. They keep the pin from coming out. And we're going to take our float off. And if you look at it, I'm going to have to put you on a tripod at some point. But you're going to want to make your bend for your float height right here. So you're going to grab back here with something and make a little bend, and remember it's going to measure a lot different out here. But while I have this float out, I'm also going to go ahead and pull the needle out and inspect the needle. That looks good. Still pliable. Sorry about the reflection. I don't know what's going on with that. Probably got grease on the camera. We'll set that down. And before I put everything back together, I'm going to blow some carburetor cleaner through both of them and make sure those passages are clear. So let me put you on a tripod and be right back. Alright, so I went ahead and I popped my needle back in there because you're going to need that to set your height. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab onto this float with a pair of pliers. And like I said, I want to make my bend right here. It sits like this in the carburetor. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it the same way. And I know my floats are too high, so I want to make my bend and come back that way. Don't get too drastic here because it multiplies out here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this back in and see where we're sitting now. And like I said, we want to have about 7/16 of an inch between the gasket and the float. So I'm going to run my bit underneath. And I went too far. So, come back out again. This time I want to take my float high. So, I'll go this way a little bit, because I kind of over-gorilla'd it the first time. And that ain't good. And get the pin back in. Yeah, how about that pin going in? Give that a little bit of that. And I went too far the other way. Wash, rinse, repeat. Alright, so I went ahead and set both sides. As you can see, that barely moves up. And the other side barely moves up. So I'm well within spec. They were way off. Which just goes to prove, you know, this is a carb that nobody ever took apart before, and things are way off, so you might even want to check your new carburetors. Another thing about float bowls, when you take these off, give them a shake, make sure there's no fuel inside of them or water inside of them, because that'll mean your float has a hole in it. Brass ones will get holes, and they will fill up, especially on older carburetors after they've been sitting for a long time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip everything over, and we got to check float drop. Alright, so float drop's going to be a little bit harder to show you guys, but you need to make sure your gasket's in here. Take a ruler, and right about where that black mark is on the top of the float is what you want to measure to. And here we're looking for about 15/16, and I am almost at 1 3/8 inches. And on that side, I'm about 1 1/4 inches. So these definitely need to come back up. And what you have to do is you got to pull your pins out once again. But if you got it this way, your needle's going to drop out. Now this time, what we're going to do is we're going to bend this tang right here. And the tang goes up against the back of the needle and seat in here. And it determines how much hang down you have. So if the float's sitting in there this way, I'm going to want to bend this tang forward in order to make it not drop so far. So let me get all that set up and I'll show you the end result. Alright, so I went ahead and bent my tang back here that rests against the needle in the seat. And as you can see right now, I'm at right about 1 inch. Still haven't done the other side yet. It's still hanging down 1 3/8 inches. Take care of that, and then we'll get this thing cleaned up and buttoned back up. Alright, so here's my other side. And as you can see, got that set to 1 inch. Like I said, it's going to be 15/16 to 1 inch. Depends on how you want to set your carb up. If you're having problems with your car in the summertime, boiling fuel and everything else, set your drop a little bit lower to have less fuel in your bowls. I hear that's a trick that works for that. And other than that, I'm done setting my floats. I am going to turn this thing back over and clean out my passages and put it all back together, and then I'll throw the carburetor back together. I'm not going to make you watch all that boring stuff, and we will come back when I get it back on the truck. Here's another little tip before you put your carburetor back together. The gasket didn't tear. It didn't leave any debris or anything like that when I took it apart, so I'm just going to go ahead and reuse this top plate gasket. But I am going to put a super thin coating of white lithium grease on there. I mean, just to make it look moist. You don't want to leave blobs of it on there or anything else. But it'll help next time you need to take something apart. If you got a little white lithium grease in between there, you're pretty much guaranteed that your gasket will come off without leaving any residue on your carb body. So I'm going to go ahead and coat that down, throw this thing back together. I'll get back with you. Okay, got it all back together. When you're putting your top plate on, don't forget to put your accelerator pump in from the underside. And make sure you set your accelerator pump arm the way it was before. Mine was all the way in. I brought it out because I want to see if a better shot off the accelerator pump will help with acceleration on the truck. And if not, I'll put it back to where it was before. But this thing's all wrapped up. I put my idle mixture screws back in. I turned them out 2 turns each just as a baseline for me to start working on it. Put a new vacuum cap onto it because I didn't trust that old one. It was looking really weak. And I put my fast idle back together, and naturally I lost that stupid little clip, but I kind of borrowed the one off of James's Edelbrock that's going on his Pontiac because we ain't going to be finishing that for a minute. So this will get me running. So we're good to go. I'm going to put this thing back on the truck and tighten it down. Another thing I do to my carbs before I put them back in service and start messing with them is I'll go ahead and fill up my float bowls. On an Edelbrock, it's here and here. On a Holly, it's front and back. Rochester has a spout that comes out of them. So I like to do that. That way I can just hit the gas a couple times, prime everything, go ahead and fire it up, let it idle. And that way I don't have to worry about spraying gasoline all around the engine compartment when I'm trying to get something running again. Alright, so I got the carb back on the engine. Like I said, I turned my idle mixture screws 2 turns out. Got my return spring hooked up. Got my accelerator hooked up. Got my choke hooked up. Got all my vacuum lines back on. Power brakes go to the rear. This PCV valve hooked up. So I'm going to go ahead and crank this thing up and see if she fires. Alright, so fired right up. What I gotta do now is I gotta go ahead and let the engine get warm, and then I can go ahead and tune this thing and set it up, and now my truck will be mobile again because I'm going to get out here and start it every week, if not more. But lesson learned, don't let things sit, don't trust gas, and all hail internal combustion. See you guys next time.